studying Revelation chapter 17, and my notes consist of 5 pages. During the previous studies, my notes were a page and a half or 2 at the most, but this chapter is the crux of the book of Revelation. In other words, the message which the Apostle John intended to convey to the first century Christians is summarized in this chapter. If you understand chapter 17, you'll be able to understand the whole book of Revelation. And if you miss chapter 17, you won't be able to make much sense of the entire book. So this one is very, very important. Let me give you a general view before we start our verse-by-verse study. I've entitled this chapter The Fall of Babylon. Now, Babylon started as a city. Then it became the capital city of an empire. So there was a city called Babylon, and there was an empire called Babylon. There was a country and an empire called Babylon. So the name Babylon is first applied to a city, then to a country, and then to an empire. So there are 3 Babylons, so to speak, in the books of history: the city of Babylon, the country of Babylon, the empire of Babylon. The name Babylon is mentioned 287 times in the Bible, more than any other city except Jerusalem. The only other city that's mentioned more in the Bible than Babylon is Jerusalem. Babylon comes second. This city and country and empire, all called Babylon, represented the essence of evil. It was the center of a false religious system, and for the Jews, it represented apostasy, opposition to God's plan, persecution of God's people, blasphemy, and religious fornication. Religious fornication is when the start worshiping other gods besides him, like idol worship. Idolatry is called spiritual fornication in the Bible, especially in the book of Revelation and in the book of Hosea. So idol worship is synonymous with religious fornication. Therefore, for the Jews, Babylon conveyed the most negative thoughts. To them, Babylon represented all that is evil. It represented idolatry, blasphemy, spiritual fornication, opposition to God's plan and work, and persecution of God. Now, in Revelation, John, the Apostle John, uses Babylon as a symbol for Rome. Because in the first century, when the Apostle John lived, the Roman Empire persecuted the Christians with the same intensity the ancient Babylonians persecuted the Jews, God's ancient people. And the way Babylon for the Jews was the center of evil, for the first century Christians, Rome was the center of all evil. For the first century Christians, Rome was the center of a false religious based on emperor worship. And this religion, the pagan religion of Rome, was diametrically opposed to Christianity, and pagan Rome persecuted the early Christians as ferociously, as vehemently as ancient Babylonians persecuted the Jews. So in the book of Revelation, when you find Paul talking about Babylon, he's using the name Babylon as a reference to pagan Rome. Okay. Tacitus, who was one of the most important Roman historians of the time, says, everything horrible and shameful found a home in Rome. This is a very conspicuous statement coming from Tacitus, who is highly regarded as one of the most authoritative Roman historians. He says, everything horrible and shameful found a home in Rome. So we're not surprised that the Apostle John refers to Rome as Babylon, calls Rome Babylon. In today's world, if you want to find a city that was as bad as Babylon and Rome, ancient Rome, that city would be Las Vegas. Just think of the immorality that's going on there, and you will have an idea of how John and the early Christians viewed Babylon and Rome. Okay. Now, in this chapter, as we go through it, you will find that according to this chapter of the book of Revelation, Rome will have a great influence in the spheres of religion, commerce, in the spheres of religion, commerce, and politics. Of course, nowadays, Rome does not have that stature that it used to have during the first 5 centuries of the Christian era. At that time, Rome was the capital city of a mighty empire. Today, that empire is gone. But in Rome today, there is a false religious system. And the book of Revelation, especially chapter 17, tells us that before the second coming of Christ, Rome will have a tremendous influence in the spheres of politics, religion, and commerce. Okay. Now, a little bit of history about Babylon. History and legend tell us that the city of Babylon was built by Queen Semiramis, whose husband was Nimrod. Nimrod is mentioned in the book of Genesis, chapter 11. Nimrod was married to Semiramis, and Semiramis was the high priestess of the Babylonian religion. And it's interesting that this religion is a false imitation of Christianity. Semiramis, the queen, who was also the high priestess of the Babylonian religion, claimed that she conceived miraculously and gave birth to a son called Tammuz. So Tammuz is the chief Babylonian god. In the Arabic calendar, the month of July is called Tammuz after this Babylonian god. It's interesting. But it's also claimed that Tammuz was killed by a wild beast and was miraculously brought back to life. So the Babylonians worshipped Semiramis, the queen, and worshipped Tammuz, her son. And there are many motifs in ancient Babylonian culture that show Semiramis cradling or holding in her arms her baby Tammuz, who is also called the savior of the world. So this was really a fabrication by the devil, or the devil, we believe, created a false imitation of Christianity, because today people draw parallels between Semiramis and the Virgin Mary, between Tammuz and Jesus Christ. Now, that's a false comparison because the Babylonian religion is void of morality. There's no morality. There are no ethical standards in the Babylonian religion. But you see how the devil is very artful. He creates an imitation that has some resemblance to the genuine and the real. And this will be the method that the devil will employ and employs today to deceive people. He creates counterfeits. For everything genuine, the devil has created a counterfeit. And the counterfeit has elements that closely resemble the genuine, but there are also vast differences between the two. So people who are not well versed in the Bible can very easily be misled and deceived. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 8, verse 14, the prophet Ezekiel denounces the practice or the ceremony of weeping for Tammuz. Since Tammuz was killed by a wild beast, the anniversary of his death was commemorated and people wept for him. And in Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 14, we're informed that this practice of weeping for Tammuz crept into Israel. And there were some Israelites who did that pagan practice. And the prophet Jeremiah in chapter 7, verse 18, tells us how incense was offered to the Queen of Heaven. And who was the Queen of Heaven? Queen Semiramis. Queen Semiramis was called the Queen of Heaven. The Roman Catholics refer to the Virgin Mary as the Queen of Heaven, call her the Queen of Heaven. So the Babylonian religion amazingly found its way into Israel, and there were Israelites at the time of Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel, and the prophet Jeremiah, who were practicing some elements of the Babylonian religion. And these two prophets denounced those pagan practices of weeping for Tammuz and offering incense to the Queen of Heaven, Semiramis. Okay, let's start verses 1 and 2. One of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, "Come, I'll show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters. With her, the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries." Okay, so one of the seven angels tells John, "Come, I want to show you a great mystery." And the scene that unfolds before John is the sight of a great prostitute who sits on many waters. The many waters, the symbol of many waters, is explained in Revelation, in the same chapter of Revelation, verse 15. Look at verse 15 of Revelation 17. Then the angel said to me, "The waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages." You remember at the very beginning of our study, in mid-October, I said we will try to let the Bible interpret itself as far as it's possible. Here in Revelation 17, we encountered a symbols, a prostitute sitting on many waters. What do the many waters symbolize? According to Revelation 17:15, the many waters symbolize nations, peoples, tribes, languages. So this prostitute is influencing many people. This prostitute has a universal influence. Her influence is not restricted to one nation, to one tribe, one language. She exerts her influence over the whole world. So her influence is universal and widespread. It's global. Now notice, when John speaks about the harlot, this is in sharp contrast to the virtuous woman we met in Revelation chapter 12. In Revelation chapter 12, there's a picture of the virtuous woman who represents God's people. And the harlot represents the people who are opposed to God, uh, the people who don't follow Jesus Christ and his gospel, are represented by this prostitute or harlot. Okay. Let's go to verse 3 to 6. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a desert. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and filled of her adulteries. This title was written on her forehead: Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. Okay. So here again, we have a non-flattering picture of an immoral woman. John calls her a harlot or a prostitute. And this woman symbolizes blasphemy, idolatry, and evil. Now notice, she is riding a scarlet beast. And this scarlet beast has 10 horns and 7 heads. This is exactly the beast we met earlier that represents the Antichrist. Now, what meaning does this symbol convey to you? This immoral woman is riding a scarlet beast, and the beast is the Antichrist. We identified the beast as the Antichrist in our earlier studies. When you see this woman riding the beast, it means the beast is upholding her. The beast is supporting her. She's riding the beast. It means the beast is supporting her. The beast power is upholding her. That's one meaning. Another meaning is that she is controlled by the beast. She's under the influence and the control of the beast. So these two images are immediately presented to us when we see this imagery. Okay, so this fallen woman is supported by the beast and is controlled by the beast. And she is decked in precious jewels. Her clothing has golden threads, scarlet color. All these are signs of royalty. In the ancient world, the scarlet color was scarlet clothes were worn by rich people, normally by royal families. And the dyes that changed the color of fabric to purple were very expensive. In the book, The Acts of the Apostles, we meet a woman called Lydia, who was converted to Christianity by the Apostle Paul. She was Jewish. When she met the Apostle Paul, she converted to Christianity. And we're told she was a merchant of purple dye. So she had a successful business. She was an influential woman and a wealthy woman, because the dyes used to change the color of fabric, cotton fabric, from white to purple. Those dyes were very costly, were very expensive, and people always searched for them. So this woman is living in luxury. She's decked in precious stones. Her clothes have golden threads and are purple in color. But notice, on her head is a title. And what's her title? Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes. That's very unflattering. And the abominations of the earth. It's interesting that in Roman times, prostitutes wore a headband, and on that headband their name was engraved. So every prostitute wore across her forehead a headband with her name engraved on it. And this woman, this harlot in Revelation, has a title on her forehead that says Babylon, the mother of prostitutes, the abomination of the earth. So here it's interesting that the Apostle John is referring to pagan Rome by using the name Babylon. Because if he used Rome, the name of Rome, the Roman authorities would have confiscated his book and burned it, destroyed it. Today we wouldn't have the book of Revelation. Under Babylon, he's describing for us the actions of pagan Rome. I believe it's a good parallel because in many respects, pagan Rome did to the Christians what pagan Babylon did to ancient Israel. As I said, remember this, that pagan Rome was the center of a false religion that was diametrically opposed to Christianity, and it was a religious system that opposed and persecuted Christians. Pagan Rome not only opposed Christians, pagan Rome persecuted Christians, like Babylon did. Okay. Now let's go to verse 7. Or verse 6. Verse 6. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. So this woman who represents pagan Rome not only opposed the Christians, she reveled in persecuting them. She reveled in shedding the blood of Christians. Okay, let's go on. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, why are you astonished? I'll explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast which you saw once was, now is not, and will come up out of the abyss and go to his destruction. Okay, this verse is one that many commentators find it difficult to explain, but I'll give you my take on it. First of all, why was John amazed? He was astonished to see how widespread the influence of this evil woman was. And she had kings under her control. 10 horns represent 10 kingdoms. 7 heads, we'll come to the 7 heads later on. Okay, now, the beast which you saw, of course, the beast the woman is riding is the Antichrist. Says the beast that you saw once was, now is not, and will come up out of the abyss and go to his destruction. Who is this one? Here, commentators have interpreted this verse in many, many ways, and I believe all of them went off tangent. Some of them say these beasts represent the Roman emperors that lived at the time of John. But if we go by that, you will encounter many historical problems. I believe that the beast that he saw and was not, and he says 5 have fallen, and one is. Who are the 5 fallen beasts? And who is the one that is? And who is the one that will come? Okay, I believe he's referring to the empires that preceded pagan Rome. What were the empires that preceded pagan Rome? First, Egypt. Second, Assyria. Third, Babylon. Fourth, Medo-Persia. Fifth, Greece. So these are the 5 fallen ones. These are 5 empires that held sway over the then known world, but at the time of John had disappeared off the stage of history. So these are the 5 fallen. And who is the one that remains? Rome. At the time of John, the only empire of antiquity that remained in power was Rome. So the one that remains is Rome. And who is the one to come? The false religious system. I believe that there will come a day when we will have a one world religion controlled by the Antichrist, controlled by the devil. And that is the one to come. And he says, but this one will not last for long. There would be an 8th one. And of course, when the Antichrist is removed, the 8th one would be the kingdom of Jesus Christ. You remember in the book of Daniel, chapter 12, the prophet was told, seal up the book until the time of the end. And then says in chapter 12 of Daniel, at the end of, in the last days, Michael the prince will stand up for his people, and all the kingdoms of this earth will become the kingdoms of God and of his Son. So Jesus' kingdom will destroy and replace all the existing kingdoms in this world. And notice, he says this 7th kingdom, which is the kingdom of the false religion. We said this religion would be worldwide. Will go to destruction. It will not survive for a long time. Everything false will be destroyed. Okay, verse 14. Are we on 14 now? Oh, well, let me see.
9.
Came, who was once and is now not, and the 8th. We studied that. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom. 12. But who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will make war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will overcome them, because he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and with him will be his called, chosen, faithful followers. Okay. So these 10 horns represent 10 kings who have not the kingdom. Some commentators say represent the nations of Europe, the European Common Market, but the European Common Market now has more than 10 members, and there are more nations waiting in line to join. So this cannot refer to the European Common Market. What we're told that these 10 kings, or you say 10 political powers, have not received their kingdom yet. They have not received authority yet. But when they receive their authority, they will support the beast and the harlot, the false religion. So here we have a representation of a political confederation. A political confederation will come about, consisting of 10 nations. And the members of this confederation will wholeheartedly support the Antichrist and the one-world religion. But the Lamb will overcome them. They will not prevail. They will reign for a short time, and then they'll be destroyed. Then the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, and languages. We explained this, that the waters on which the woman sits represent people, nations. This means the woman's influence will be universal and global. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They would eat her flesh and burn her with fire. It's interesting that the Antichrist will use the prostitute, which means opposed to Christianity, that persecutes the Christians. This religion is based on idolatry and blasphemy. The devil, the Antichrist, will use this woman to accomplish his purpose. And once his purpose is accomplished, he will dispense with her. He'll get rid of her. He'll destroy her. So this is the way the devil uses people. He uses them to accomplish his purpose, and after they've done his bidding, he discards them like a napkin, the way we discard a Kleenex napkin. So there's no loyalty here. There's a proverb in English that says there's no loyalty among thieves. And I would say I would like to amend it a little bit, say there's no loyalty among evil people. So the harlot will be destroyed. The false religion that is supported by the Antichrist will be destroyed by the Antichrist, by the devil. Okay. For God has put into their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to give the beast their power to rule. Now, here you still see God in control, that God has put into the heart of the people to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to give the beast their power. He's talking about the 10 kings, the confederation of 10 kings, who will support the false religion, the one-word religious system, which is based on blasphemy and falsehood. That to the naked eye or to a casual observer, it would seem that the Antichrist is in control of the affairs of the nations. But in reality, God is behind the scenes, behind the curtain, working out his purposes. So God retains full control. World events are never slide out of God's control. God will remain in power until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. So here you see this harlot is identified as a city. And this city, we're told, sits on 7 hills. Rome was built on 7 hills. All historians refer to Rome as the city that sits on 7 hills. So the description is very vivid and unmistakable. The prophet is telling us that pagan Rome is the harlot, is Babylon the Great, the mystery Babylon, known for blasphemy and religious fornication. Remember, religious fornication is idol worship. Idol worship is likened throughout the Bible as to religious fornication. Now, I covered the whole thing with you as briefly as possible. I have 5 pages of notes, which you can take home and study in further detail. In the meantime, I'm ready to entertain questions if you have any questions about today's Bible study.
Bad Valley. This is Arpi. How are you?
I'm fine. Hope you're well.
Bad Valley, the beast is different than Antichrist, because Antichrist is separate. Then the beast and the false prophet, they are like Trinity, you know, they are 3 in the beast is not the Antichrist. The beast is the beast. Then Antichrist, then the false prophet. They are like God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. They imitate, imitate God. They are also 3. The beast.
Yeah, the unholy Trinity.
Yeah, unholy Trinity. The beast is different than the Antichrist is different. The beast is different, isn't it?
But no, because it's the same as the beast, which is mentioned in Revelation 13, chapter 13.
Yeah, but it's not.
The beast is the same beast, except here we are told that the woman, this harlot, rides the beast.
What does it do? What?
Meaning she's supported by the beast, and the beast is the Antichrist. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, they are.
The one who supports this false religion is the Antichrist.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah.
The woman rides the beast. Yeah, and the description of the beast is very much like Revelation, the beast of Revelation chapter 13, and there we're told in no uncertain terms that the beast is the Antichrist. So you have to be consistent. Once you identify a symbol, you can't change the imagery. You can't change the meaning of the imagery. Once we said waters in the book of Revelation represent people, nations, then that's it. We have to apply it throughout the book of Revelation. You have to be consistent. And the same thing applies to the beast. Once you say the beast is the Antichrist, then you have to be consistent throughout.
But like with the
Trinity, but you know, it's true that you have the beast, the false prophet, and the Antichrist.
Yeah, 3 in. But they are.
Then I want to tell you something here interesting. I wanted to avoid this, but in the 15th and 16th century, the Protestant religious reformer, all of them, without exception, identified the beast as the papacy, the institution of the papacy. They said the Pope of the papacy is the beast. So today, I would say that I would not argue with them. I would say identification was correct, because in the Middle Ages, the papacy was vehemently opposed to religious reform. The papacy was opposed to the distribution and the translation of the Bible. They didn't want the Bible to be translated. They didn't want the Bible to be distributed. They claimed that only the priests could understand the Bible, and only the priests had the right to explain the Bible to others. Now, of course, opposed to the translation of the Bible, they're no longer opposed to the Bible, but in the Middle Ages they were. I'm glad they changed that stand. So the reformers were right to say the beast was the papacy, the institution of the papacy. But if you read Revelation chapter 17, you'll find that this Antichrist power is not confined to a branch of Christianity. It's global, it's universal. Nations and languages. So the Christ and his kingdom will not be confined to one of Christianity. It's greater than one branch of Christianity.
And Bad Valley, and it says only the chosen and the faithful they gonna be saved. Why is still
Yes.
chosen? Not every, only the chosen and the faithful. Chosen. Who chose them? Who chose us? God chose us. See, we come back to this chosen thing. Who chose us? God chose us.
That's a that's a huge Bible study about chosen and election. Who are the chosen of God? Who are the elect of God? That's like as wide. It's as wide in its scope as the tribulation. I promised you after we're through with Revelation, we'll study the tribulation, the great tribulation, what the Bible teaches about the great tribulation. Then we can study about the chosen and the elect. Who are God's chosen? Who are the elect of God? And how you become a chosen and an elect of God. We'll study that.
Yeah, it's true. Calvinism versus Arminianism, they haven't, everybody is saying something. We have to just agree to not disagree, to not, what do you call, agree to disagree. Agree to not disagree.
Yeah, well, I know the difference between Calvinism and Arminianism. Yes. I know that, but I have my own take based on the Bible, on the text of the Bible. I will stick to the text of the Bible, the Hebrew and the Greek, and then we'll find out that not everything Calvinism says is right, not everything Armenians say is right. By the way, these Armenians are different from the Armenian nation. Arminius was a Dutch theologian. Arminius, his name was Arminius. He was a Dutch theologian who was opposed to Calvinism. So his theological system is called Arminianism. Don't confuse it with the Armenian nation.
I know. Bad Valley, we will find a solution. We put Tarianism, the Tarian instead of Calvinism, Tarianism.
No, I don't want to be a cult leader. I'm opposed to worshiping a personality, and you think that this person is above reproach, he can't fall, and he is all knowledgeable, all knowing. I don't make those claims. And I don't want people to follow me. I want people to follow Jesus Christ, my Savior.
Yeah, but they are theologians and they have their own decision. They made their decision. Calvin, he made his decision from the Bible, because there are so many times elect, chosen, and Arminius, he has his own. And then I don't know, there is some, even Daniel Albari, and he said, I'm in the middle. I asked him, he said, I'm in the middle. I'm some from the Calvin, some from Arminius. You know, it's that's what
you can't be in the middle. If what's wrong is wrong, what's right is right. Now, hold your horses, RP. Don't run ahead of me, and I promise that we will study those two topics after we're through with the Revelation, and you will be surprised. You will be happily surprised to discover what the Bible says about the tribulation, and about you'll find that what the Bible says is completely different from the current modern thoughts.
Are you following what Pope is doing? Have you heard that he's ignore the Bible? He has another book to follow, not the Bible, and he's going to Iraq and he's going to Iran. He's meeting those Muslim people.
Yeah, well,
are you following what he's doing?
Yeah, he's going to Iraq.
Iraq and Iran.
He's going to Iraq.
Too many.
He's trying to, let me tell you something. The aim of the Catholic Church is to promote religious unity. And they believe that this religious unity can be achieved through dialogue. Pope John Paul II, he said that he and the Dalai Lama will work together to promote unity among people of Polycarp that he was envisioning a time when Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, and Hindus would all pray to one God, or would accept the tenets of one religion.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what we study in Revelation 17, that a word religion would be established. And today we see people there are people who are advocating it doesn't matter what you believe.
Yeah.
They say all religions are alike. It doesn't matter what you believe. Now, these people who have this thought, they're paving the way for the seduction to be seduced by this harlot of Revelation 17.
Yes.
That's exactly what the Vatican is trying to do. They're telling people, don't change all your doctrine, continue your practices, your customs, or teach the Pope to be Peter's successor, or accept his primacy. Your religious beliefs, all your religious, don't change anything.
Yeah.
They're to achieve or establish a one-word religion that will be acceptable to all. And that's exactly what Revelation chapter 17 tells us will happen.
And he
before
accepted
Christ's second coming.
And he accepted the same sex gay marriages. He accepted it. He's allowing.
Oh yeah, he accepted it. And I don't know if you followed the news. Are you acquainted with Max Lucado?
Yeah,
Max Lucado is a prolific Christian writer. He has authored more than 43 books. He's well acclaimed as a theologian. He's highly respected among evangelicals. But last week, he was the guest speaker at an Episcopal church in Washington, D.C. He endorsed gay marriage, and he said gay people could adopt children, including Christian children.
Max Lucado. Max Lucado.
Yeah, Max Lucado. Yeah, Max Lucado. And many Christian leaders now have risen in arms against him, and I don't condemn them. They were right. But I was really surprised that a person like Max Lucado, a luminary in the Christian world, has finally succumbed toward pressure.
Yeah.
Now, there are many politicians who are pressuring Christian leaders to accept homosexuality as a normal lifestyle. And a person cannot believe the Bible and endorse homosexuality. Romans chapter 1 is very clear. The practice of homosexuality is not approved by God. So you have to decide whether you want to obey God or you want to follow the world. And that would be, I believe, the final decision. Will you remain loyal to Jesus Christ and the gospel, or will you be swayed by political considerations? That will be the litmus test in the final days.
But Billy, this is Araxi.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm interrupting at a bad time, but I just have a quick question about Rome. So, I might have mentioned that recently, since I have time on my hands, I'm kind of back to studying more history. And I do watch public television mostly, almost entirely. And there are all these, usually nice documentaries with nice visuals.
Yes.
It helps you understand things better with the visuals attached. And so regarding Rome, so there seems to be a general sort of consensus that when there were some documentaries about the evolution of Christianity from the early days of Christ to after the resurrection and the start of the church, they do talk about Rome. I did take notes. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact dates, but basically, I agree. Rome for us amongst, among the churches and, the church groups I've been in since the age of 21, Rome is always known as the persecutor of the Christians. But these historians, kind of going back to time, basically assert that, at the beginning, as, so in the beginning, as things evolved, the Roman Empire naturally, had many different peoples, Jews and, Christians eventually spreading through the empire and so forth, and different, nationalities, and so forth and so forth. So their basic assertion is that, in the beginning, at least, the Roman Empire was quite accommodating to these different nationalities and religions, that their main issue was, you do have to adhere to, major sort of governmental, I'm such at a loss for words since I'm not working anymore.
Yeah,
But, as long as, you pay your taxes, you don't create waves, blah, 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 blah. So one of them is basically that they were quite tolerant of the early Christians, as long as there was no threat. But eventually they do show that, as Christians gained power, and it was not just a simple sect within the Jewish religion, that's when they became more and more persecuted, and the Christians were a threat. Do you agree with that basic assessment?
well, this is a view, I'm acquainted with it. It's partially true, it's not wholly true, because Emperor Claudius was so upset with the Jews that he expelled them from Rome. If you read history, Emperor Claudius.
Yes, I'm aware of him.
Emperor Claudius expelled all the Jews from the city of Rome.
Yes, it does say that too.
Yeah, and then when some of the emperors deified themselves
Yes.
and demanded that all their subjects worship them or pay homage to them, that's when the Christians said, we have no king but Jesus Christ. We would not bow to any emperor except to Jesus Christ, the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. And that's why they were persecuted. They were charged with treason against Rome because of their refusal to worship the emperors, like August Caesar.
Right.
And for example, one of the Christian leaders that was arrested and condemned to death was Polycarp. Polycarp was the leader of the Christian church in Smyrna, the city of Smyrna. It's in Turkey now, but it used in the Eastern Roman Empire. What's now Asia Minor used to be the Eastern Roman Empire. He was arrested because he refused to acknowledge Caesar as a god. He refused to pay homage to Caesar as God. When at his trial, the Roman governor was very sympathetic to this old man. He found this man was so gentle, so amiable, so amicable. He didn't want to sentence him to death. So he said, all you have to do is say, Caesar, my Lord, together with Jesus. And Polycarp refused, was burned at the stake. So Christianity was not a threat to the Roman Empire. The Christians were a minority, but the Roman Empire was determined to exterminate Christians because they refused to worship the emperor. And persecuted the Christians. But he discovered every time one Christian was martyred, 10 more people converted to Christianity. or that sentence was coined. The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. This sentence was coined at that time. And then Constantine was a politician. He didn't care for religion. He was a politician. He wanted to secure his power and his throne. And he said, if we can't beat the Christians, let's join them.
Huh.
So he took Christianity for political purposes.
Huh.
And after he became Christian, he controlled the church. He wanted to dictate his opinions to the church councils. And he tried to control the church and was very successful at that. So what you said is partially true, but there are some people today who try, they don't want to bring up the atrocities of the past. They want to present everything in a bright light. So they gloss over the errors, over the dark pages of history. But we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic. And, you know, I have no access to truth. Error is error. And the facts of history are incontrovertible. But there are some historians who try to dilute some facts or lessen their impact. When you know what the truth is, you can immediately identify the wrong, the error.
Yes.
But if you don't know the truth, you can easily be misled.
Yes. Yes, I understand. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Araxi, for your question.
Veli, you got disconnected for a minute. Was it Constantine, the last emperor? He joined with the Christian.
Constantine the Great.
Constantine the Great. Oh, Constantine the Great.
Yes, he was the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire. In the year 313, he issued a decree called the Edict of Milan. He accepted Christianity to be one of the religions of the Roman Empire and put an end to the persecution of Christians throughout the empire. He said Christianity was no longer a sect. Christians should not be persecuted. All persecutions against the Christians stopped. And he became a Christian. He was baptized and his army was baptized with him. We have the historical record. He assembled his army near the shores of the Mediterranean. And then he was the commander-in-chief of the army. He told them, onward march. And the Roman soldiers were trained to obey their commander. So they marched forward into the waters of the sea. And when the water reached to their necks, he said, halt, they halted. Then he said, turn around, they turned around. He said, come out, they baptized your Christian. But their lives, their characters were not changed. They were still pagans. And that's how, in time, paganism got mixed with Christianity. Pagan practices crept into the church and have been adopted by the church.
Even Badveli, December 25th, we celebrate Christmas.
Yeah.
It's Tammuz's birthday. That's what pagan time they used to, isn't it? Tammuz, the guy we're talking, the son's birthday, they used to, it's a big holiday. And when they made Easter, they put Christmas, they put December 25th so that people, they don't celebrate Tammuz's birthday. I think that's why December 25th. Jesus wasn't born.
I don't know if it was the birthday of the Babylonian god Tammuz.
Yeah.
But I know that December 25 was the winter solstice and was a sacred day for the pagans in Europe, European pagans. And the mistletoe comes from the pagan Europeans, and the what else? There are several Christian customs that are pagan in origin, including the Christmas tree. But the time of Martin Luther started decorating trees. They first decorated them with apples. The only ornaments they put was apples. They still use different ornaments, candles, and tinsel and things like that. But the Germans in the Middle Ages revived the decoration of the Christmas tree, which was a pagan custom. In the book of Jeremiah, it says the pagans cut a tree, a pine tree, brought it to their home and decorated it. It all depends on the meanings you attach to an object. We don't worship Christmas trees today. The Christmas tree for the Christians is a symbol of new life. It's an evergreen symbolizing renewal. And we say the Christmas tree symbolizes eternal life that Christ has given us. Or many people say the Christmas tree is symbol of the tree of life. You know, I mean, there'll be a tree of life that would bear 12. To some Christians, say the Christmas tree is a symbol of the tree of life. So it has lost its pagan meanings, and no Christian today worships a Christmas tree. So some people denounce all pagan practices, including decorating a Christmas tree, and object to its presence in Christian homes. Other Christians say we have attached Christian meanings to it. The Christmas tree is meant to the pagans. We have some meanings to it. And Bible. It all depends on what you attach to a certain object. Like the Armenians. Take, for example, the Armenians. We have pagan customs in the Armenian culture. For example, we have a feast called Vartavar, where we drench people with water. This comes from pagan times. The Armenians had a goddess called Astrik. She was the goddess of the seas and rivers and waters. And on her birthday, people poured water on each other. So we still do that. It's a major feast. If you go to Armenia, if you happen to be in Armenia, on the feast day of Vartavar, you see people everywhere pour pails of water on any passersby in the streets. Then there's another Armenian feast called Diaran Tarach. It comes in mid-February. Armenians build a bonfire and they leap over it. That's a remnant of Zoroastrianism. The Persians do it to this day, although the Persians have converted to Islam, but they still have this Zoroastrian practice. On the 13th day of their New Year, the Persian New Year happens on March 21. So on the 13th day, well, my wife says before. Okay, but they form a bonfire and they jump over it and they talk to the sun. They address the sun. They say, "Oh sun, take the paleness of my face and give me your redness. Oh sun, give me your redness, take away my paleness." They say this and they jump over the fire. The Armenians do the same thing, but we call it Diaran Tarach. But it's a pagan practice. So the remnants of Zoroastrianism are still found in Armenian culture, and the remnants of European paganism are found in Western Europe, especially among Roman Catholics. Some historians say Roman Catholicism is an artful blend of Christianity and paganism. Constantine the Great was artful. He just blended the two religions together. Or he made, some Catholic historians say that the church did these changes to make it easy for the pagan Europeans to become Christians. So some Catholics admit it, but they say it's good because the ultimate purpose was good. The conversion of the pagans to Christianity, and the church made it easy for the pagans to accept Christianity by incorporating some of their customs.
Yes.
Adveli, I'm going to change the subject, and I have a curiosity question.
Okay.
In the Bible, whenever it talks about the city with 7 hills, automatically it is understood that it's Rome.
Yes.
Well, being born and raised in Jordan, we know that Amman, Jordan, is also a city of 7 hills. Why is it that it's automatically understood as Rome and not possibly Amman, Jordan?
Well, Amman, Jordan is built on mountains, not hills.
Oh, okay. Is that the difference? Okay.
There's a difference between hills and mountains.
Okay. All
They
right.
call it Jabal Ashrafiyya, Jabal Amman, Jabal.
Right.
So the Jordanians don't call those hills, they call them mountains.
No, yeah.
So
But
there's the
not all that big of a mountain. I mean, they're big hills, but anyway, I was just curious, you know.
Yeah, well, that's good. I could see why you made that comparison, but throughout history, in all history books, Rome is called the city of the 7 hills.
Okay.
There are many references to Rome as being built on 7 hills. So the identification is unmistakable.
Okay.
And in Revelation 17, the last verse, we're told the harlot represents a city.
Mm-hmm.
And that city is Rome. Of course, one reason John wrote the book in symbolic language, because he didn't want the Roman authorities to understand it. He wanted only the Christians to understand the meaning and the content of the book. He didn't want the enemies of the Christians, the Roman authorities, to understand it. So that's why he used Babylon while referring to Rome, to pagan Rome. But when we say Rome, I love to use the word pagan Rome.
Mm-hmm.
Pagan Rome. And pagan Rome persecuted many Christians and killed many Christians. Some historians say that pagan Rome killed as many as 20 million Christians. In 4 centuries, during 4 centuries, pagan Rome killed 20 million Christians. That figure seems to be reasonable. And you know, a caution not to follow word leaders. We all admire Martin Luther, who started the Protestant Reformation. He was a man that God used in a marvelous way. But he wasn't infallible. He made a big mistake. One of the big mistakes he made was he wrote a pamphlet which is anti-Semitic. And Hitler used it to justify his killing of the Jews. So and then lately, Max Lucado, a highly venerated Christian leader, now is endorsing homosexuality. So when you follow people, you will be in trouble, you will be dismayed.
Right.
My advice is just follow Jesus Christ, and no one can replace Jesus Christ for us.
Because even Christian
and His word, you're in the right path and you're on safe ground. Once you start following a figure, a charismatic figure, you are in danger of becoming a cultist. Because one of the definitions of a cult is to have a charismatic leader whose influence is so great that everybody follows him and they consider him infallible. His word is gospel, and that led astray.
Also well-known Christians, or also Christian organizations, well-known Christian organizations are being pressured by other groups who are influential for them to change and comply. Because also, I think it was this week, I had read that there's a Christian adoption agency.
Yes, called Bethany.
Yes, that
Bethany.
they did not service homosexual couples. They only would allow the adoptions to, couples of, where it's a man and a woman. And now they are going to be servicing or working with homosexual gay couples because of pressure. So they will not lose certain, I guess, privileges.
The state threatened them. The state said if they did not place the children in homosexual homes,
Yes,
they would lose state funding.
that's right.
So not to lose state funding, they yielded. They caved in.
That's right.
Yeah, it's called Bethany Adoption Services. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's we have a choice all the time. What to believe, whom to follow.
And if this Equality Act passes the Senate, we're in real trouble.
There will be a lawsuits. There will be lawsuits. They are afraid. They can sue them, and then millions, the lawyers and things. It's gonna go. That's what it is. The lawsuit over here. They will sue them, and then they lose so much money.
But remember, one of the things we studied tonight: God is still in control, even while the Antichrist is active here in the Revelation 17. And he's following his Machiavellian tricks. God is still in control. Ultimately, God will prevail. He and his truth will prevail, and the Antichrist will be destroyed. He's called the son of perdition. Perdition means destruction, so he'll be destroyed. Only thing indestructible is the truth, the gospel truth. No one can destroy that.
But really, this adultery only, there is, why women, the women sitting, always adultery was women. Could it be a man become a harlot? Can the man be a harlot? Why only women sitting? Well, I don't know why they.
Well, you see, adultery refers to both sexes. And when the Bible talks about spiritual fornication, the reference is to the worship of idols. So when God's people start worshiping idols, then they are become guilty of committing spiritual fornication, spiritual adultery.
She's asking why women?
Why the women?
Why women?
Yeah, because the church in the Bible is feminine. Ecclesia, it's a feminine noun. In Greek, all nouns that end in IA are feminine. Masculine nouns end in OS, like anthropos, meaning man. So if a noun in Greek ends in OS, it's masculine gender. If it ends in IA, it's feminine. And the church is called ecclesia, which is feminine in Greek. And the church is called the bride of Christ. The bride of Christ has to be a woman.
Okay. Thank you.
So the church is represented as a virtuous woman, and false religion is represented as a harlot. Okay.
Thank you, Badweli.
Well, God bless you all.
Thank you so much. God bless
We'll meet
you.
again next week.
Lord willing. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.